Hi everybody, welcome to another installment of App Marketing Conversations. As always, I'm here with Ryan Morel, Gamehouse, Robi Ganguly of Apptentive, and I'm Ian Sefferman of MobileDevHQ. So, for probably the last 4 years-ish, I think there has been a common question that has been asked and talked about and discussed over and over and over again, and that is Google Play versus iOS.
The horse is dead.
Yeah.
It's been beaten.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it one more time. But in particular, I wanted to actually think about how Google Play and iOS differ in terms of innovation today, right? So who is really innovating? Who is sort of not necessarily market share, not what platform should you develop for first, but really like who's doing interesting things, right? Which one of those guys? And obviously, like MobileDevHQ has a bent towards search and discovery and things like that, but that's not just in general, right? So, give me your highest level. Who do you think is more innovative today, iOS or Google Play?
So, it's a hard question for me to answer because I'm clearly more of an Apple fanboy than I am a Google fanboy. So I think Google is doing more faster to drive their ecosystem than Apple is, but I'm not sure that Apple needs to.
Interesting. What about you?
I mean, I think that the innovation is definitely happening at Google. That they're experimenting with more, they're taking more of their data and applying it. And it just seems like their infrastructure allows them to do that faster than whatever's happening behind the scenes at Apple. I think the chomp is probably still not 100% integrated. So it just seems like Google's able to execute faster on new things.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know if you saw the co-founder of Chomp is leaving.
Yeah, I did see that.
And she wasn't even working in search at all anymore, right? She was in Apple Maps, which is does anybody use Apple Maps, right? Like,
I do actually.
Do you really?
Yeah, they've gotten a lot better.
Wow.
I mean, if you look at like the use, this is totally tangential, but if you look at like the usage curves, like Google Maps is going like this, and Apple Maps is going like this, just by default of
interesting
because it's
preloaded. Yeah. Like I'm a staunch believer that Google Play has done far more and Android have done far more in incremental innovation, right? So like Apple, in my opinion, is the best company in the world at doing sort of 100x leaps, right? Like they will go from we have flip phones to we have the iPhone, and that's freaking amazing. And then Google is actually pretty good at being like, okay, well we have an Android device, now we're gonna have an app store, now we're gonna have this, now we're gonna have this, now we're gonna have Google Now we're gonna have all these things, and like they incrementally innovate. And so it's like my guess is that something interesting is going on under the covers in Apple right now that we don't know about, but to all marketers, publishers, and consumers, Google Play seems like they're really innovating faster to me.
Yeah, well, and I'd say that's their DNA, right? Because they're a services company. So if you kind of looked at the two ecosystems separately, you'd say Apple is a full stack ecosystem, and Google's sort of, but not really, right? Because they, for the most part, don't own hardware manufacturing, they don't own distribution, they don't own all of that stuff. So that's one side of things. Google is good at services. Apple is good at creating hardware, distributing it, and the software ecosystem around it. I mean, ultimately, I had this conversation at GDC last week, like, and it's been talked about before by a lot of the big name bloggers, right? It's like, despite the fact that Android has substantially more users and it grows faster, Apple's still making 5 times the money on content versus Google Play. So, like, the logic of market share doesn't work, right? So at some point Google has to be doing this stuff because they have to add incremental value to developers and consumers, because no offense to Robi, but Android consumers aren't as valuable.
Thanks, buddy.
In
feel validated over here.
In aggregate, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about from the developer side. Let's just give some concrete examples of things that Google Play has innovated on and things that Apple has innovated on, and potentially where both of them can go from there.
I don't know, I think from the developer side, the stuff that Google has continued to do around personalization is hard to see explicitly, but implicitly it's interesting because assuming that the few numbers that we've seen around it in terms of increases in installs are correct, and then what you see in terms of organic is correct, that means that Google's fundamentally driving developers more long-term users, right? Yeah. So I think that's really fascinating, and the more they can do that, the more that monetization question becomes perhaps more of a debate, right? Because it's not just about credit cards on file, then you're talking about just getting better installs, and that changes the equation pretty dramatically. So if I was them, I would continue to push on that axis.
Yeah, and you were talking about this before we started filming, which is like they take that and combine it with the fact that they build better developer tools than Apple does, and you have some pretty rich insights for a marketer to really glean off of, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I still don't know that it matters. It's like, I don't mean to poke the bear across the lake here, but like Microsoft has always built great developer tools. Great developer tools can't save you. I mean, they help and they can give you a leg up when you have like competitive ecosystems that are, oh, what's going on like this? But I mean, I think ultimately Robi's point is that Android has enough users to be relevant regardless of the fact that they don't monetize well. If they start monetizing well, it's an entirely different ballgame.
Totally. So, what can you had some thoughts before on what Apple can do or what Apple might be doing, to get better.
Yeah. So I think my biggest hope for Apple, at least as it relates to iOS 8, is doing a better job at cross-app and web-to-app linking to unify the experience a little bit more. So, and if we back up a little bit, you've seen like the iPad and the iPhone move away from kind of just a single app going to each one to the iOS search, where you search for something, it pops up. It's very much like a web experience, right? iTunes is starting to look more and more like the web. So I think they need to continue to combine those and making it really easy for someone to know, hey, so this person came from this website to this app, then they went to this other app, and you can track them all the way through. That sort of cross-app and web-to-app linking will be super valuable for marketers. And as we all know, like the mobile web is growing really fast. Not as fast as apps are growing, but it's still growing really fast. And if Apple believes, and I think that they do, that the majority of search and content consumption on the web is going to be mobile within, say, the next 10 years, then they need to make dramatic strides in being able to connect that web experience to their ecosystem, because right now it's not.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think there's a lot of people working on deep linking, and fundamentally some sort of deep linking has to happen, right? Like at a large scale, and it probably has to come from a platform owner.
It has to, right? Like that's the only way to make it work, and that's what Google does, right? So you could pass in right now referral URLs into any ad creative via Google. I don't know, you know better, but at the back end it says, oh, this website drove me this traffic. That's what Google's good at.
Absolutely. Cool. All right. Well, be sure to watch the other installments and like this video, subscribe to our channel. Thanks.